Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3 o'clock, and thank you for joining the IBC Africa region today. I'm Rihanna Sinden, and it's an absolute pleasure to host this webinar. Our topic, from silent cracks to open dialogues, using communication to prevent and heal burnout, comes as no surprise. Earlier this year, the Gallagher Employee Communication Report indicated that employee burnout is on the increase, and these concerns were also discussed within our Africa SMP and CMP group. And Carleen Dauport-Botha kindly offered to lead today's discussion, as this topic lies close to her heart. A former IBC Africa board member, entrepreneur, communication leader, SCMP, and transformation consultant, Carleen will guide us through the topic, cover over the next 40 to 45 minutes, after which we will open the floor for questions. And without further ado, over to you, Carleen.
Thank you, Rihanna, and thank you to the IABC for inviting me. And yes, it's always nice to be among your peers and your tribes. So welcome everybody, and I see some familiar names on the screen. Thank you for joining us and for making some time to listen to me today, but not just listen to me. Maybe this is an opportunity to start listening to yourself and to listen to your own experience and to your own body. So I'm going to just share my screen. I've got a few slides put together, but I really want to try and just keep it conversational. Or am I sharing? Am I sharing? I like to share. There we go. We are there. Great. Maybe I must just do this, and that's going to be better. Okay. So the reason why we thought this would be a very a valid topic to talk about is because apart from the daily, everyday things, there seems to be a new tendency in organizations and employees to really start taking ownership and to start taking responsibility for wellness. And we have wellness discussions regularly. We have wellness departments and we have wellness programs and all those kind of things. But at some point, I think it still touches on what we call the softer side of things, the soft skills. And it's a topic that's mostly reserved for the females. And I think the more we start talking about what burnout is and how burnout shows up, and also what the real business risk is around burnout, we can start normalizing having these conversations. And yeah, so I'm going to skip my introduction because Rihanna's already done that. But don't you like my AI picture? When last did you feel, maybe just by some reaction on your screen, a thumbs up or a heart or whatever, when last did you feel like this at work? Fully here, clear, energized, present in your work. And how often do you feel like this? Or there's things like there's this internal narrative where you tell yourself, I just have to get through this meeting, or I just have to get through this day, or I can rest later and I better not drop the ball right now. And for many of us, this voice has become a very familiar narrative inside our own minds. We keep on performing and we keep on delivering and we keep on showing up. But somewhere in the back of our minds, we start growing silent. And if things to keep it quiet, maybe we have one more glass of wine in the evening just to really keep it down and keep it locked up, or do dangerous things to make us forget about the stress and the anxiety that we experience at work. We breed bad habits to try and cope with what we are actually experiencing. So burnout doesn't start with a collapse. A collapse is the end of it. Once you get to collapse, you can safely say, okay, well, the worst is now over. It begins with non-witnessed, a colleague or a spouse or a friend go through something like that, an employee of yours, perhaps, or maybe somewhere you've noticed a slippery slide of disengagement. So today, I want to talk about how communication and the conversations we have with ourselves and with the people around us, and the conversations that we avoid as well, might be the most powerful tool that we have to prevent burnout and also to heal from it. So there was a time in my life where I really had it all together, or so I thought. I thought I knew how to keep it together. Or I thought I knew what keeping it together looks like. My career was doing well. I built a successful career. I was delivering, I was performing, I was traveling. I was really burning both ends of the stick. But somewhere something started to shift for me, and it wasn't dramatic at first. It was actually quite subtle. And if I when I try to remember when was the first signs, when did I first notice starting to feel different? And if I have to be very honest, it was probably once I came back from maternity leave after my son was born. He's turning 9. I just didn't feel like myself anymore. And I was a little bit more tired as usual. And I told myself, but that's normal. I'm heading into my 40s, so, it's normal. And I felt disconnected. And again, I rationalized it for myself and said, well, you've been away for a while and you had a baby, and things aren't supposed to look the same or feel the same after that. But what was scary for me is that I started losing meaning in what I was busy with, losing meaning in the work that I was doing. So I grasped for more and more and more, really trying to get that internal satisfaction of self-actualization. And I just kept on going. And I told myself, you can't fall apart right now. You've just come back to work. You've got to prove yourself. People are relying on you. You've got to keep on going. And so I did. And I kept on going, and I ignored the warning signs, and I went past the fatigue. And I was proud of myself because I could work until 1 o'clock in the morning and grab a quick nap and be up at 5 o'clock in the morning again. And I was performing and performing. And I did that for a good 6 or 7 years after I felt something wasn't right anymore. So for 6 or 7 years, I can't really say when, but I kept on pushing beyond what was my personal human limit. And I took on more responsibility. My mom passed away. I took my dad in again to live with me. I bought a business. I left an industry that I felt no longer, it didn't fit me anymore. So there was all kinds of irrational decisions and changes and trying to grasp at something that felt meaningful to me. until eventually my body did what I wouldn't allow my mind to do, and it stopped. My body just stopped. And there was a form of dysregulation that happened, and I first blamed it on perimenopause. I'm there. But the reality was far worse. It was my nervous system. My nervous system was severed. It wasn't even bruised, and it wasn't even tired. It was literally severed. There were neurotransmitters that were firing in all kinds of different directions, and it didn't connect. It didn't meet where it was supposed to go, and there were no sign of rational at all. I don't remember. That's what my husband says. So, but there was a day or a week or a moment that it really came crashing down, and I found myself on the kitchen floor, unable to even really take a meaningful breath. It was literally, I could see myself lying on the kitchen floor for the rest of my life, because nothing after that, I couldn't see myself getting up, and I couldn't see myself living a meaningful life after that. And then in that space, I had to start listening differently. And I'm emotional about it because I am immensely grateful at how much our bodies can actually take. And also, of course, immensely grateful for the help that I've had in that time. So what I realized was that burnout wasn't about how much I was doing. It was about how little I was saying to myself and to others. I wasn't talking to my husband about what was worrying me and what my headspace was like. I wasn't naming the feelings that I had. And I wasn't definitely not asking for support. What would that look like if Superwoman asks for support, you know? And I wasn't allowing that space for honesty. Building a business from scratch, and you can't say, but I can't do this. It's too much. But in that silence that I wasn't voicing, in the conversations, in the words, in the communication I wasn't expressing, that's where burnout grew. And recovery didn't start with just rest. It started with language, and it started with connection. It started with saying, but I'm not okay. And I need support, and this is too much. I can't carry all of this by myself. And slowly, through conversations with myself and with the right people, my family, my close friends, so a therapist or three, things began to shift. The moment I could name what was going on with me, the moment I could say, these are the feelings that I'm having, I could start taking steps to recovery. And I wouldn't say that it's been a good 18 months of healing now, and I won't say I'm there. It's a journey. I'm learning every day, but I can feel the resilience is back, and I can feel the clarity of mind is back, and I'm still in perimenopause. That doesn't change. But the energy is back, and so that's why I believe this very deeply, that burnout is not just a workload issue. I mean, it starts with a workload issue, but very often it's a communication issue. So when I speak about burnout, I'm not speaking about theory only. It's my own lived experience. And I've sat in the silence of it. And there's something that completely drives my approach these days. And it's not that burnout is personal. It's It's organizational. I sincerely believe that it's also affecting soft issue. I'm going to miss one of the biggest risks that organizations face today. So what is the business risk? Globally, if you read the reports, uh, employee engagement has dropped to some of the lowest levels that we've seen even since the pandemic. And I would actually put my head on a block to say even before the tipping the scale even further. In the Gallup research, as Rihanna mentioned earlier also, about 20% of employees globally, only 20% are truly engaged in their work. And that disengagement is very expensive. In research that was published in the American Journal of Preventative Medicine, they found that burnout and disengagement can cost organizations between 4,000 and 21,000 US dollars per employee annually, depending on their role and their seniority and what their impact on the business is. But for a company of 1,000 employees, the average annual cost can exceed over 5 million US dollars. So with those figures in mind, this is not a well-being side. It's not a well-being conversation anymore. It's operational risk, it's bottom line, it's productivity leakage, and it's talent erosion that's happening underneath all the performance metrics. In South Africa, I think from an African context, but from a South African perspective where I am, you can kind of derive at a point where not only are we navigating disengagement at work, but by the time South Africans or even Africans get to work in the morning, everything that they've had to navigate throughout their personal lives and their private lives have already taken it's already taken a chunk out of their mental resilience for the day. I mean, I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning. I live in the suburbs in Pretoria, but we've been having shootings here for the last 2 weeks. One of my neighbors were killed two weeks ago. On Monday evening, another one was shot, and this morning at 3 a.m., the police were shooting literally 3 houses away from me. Now that works on your nervous system. You're on high alert. You are in a fight or flight mode. So then you have to go to work, and you've got the added pressure of workload that's too much, or a leader that's not really recognizing what his team is going through. So from a South African context, I think we are real candidates to say that we are living in a burnout epidemic at the moment. So what does burnout then actually do from an organizational perspective? What's the cost of this silence? It's unproductivity. We show up, we're at work, we clock in at 8, we leave at 5. But what do we do in the space that we're there? There's delays or lack in decision making, mistakes, a lot of mistakes. I'm not even going to ask you to show hands, but how is your work impacted by mistakes from colleagues or leaders or management? Constrained output and conflict. That's just the tip of the iceberg from the lack of engagement and what burnout actually does to the bottom line of an organization. And I think a lot of organizations are paying salaries to unproductive employees. So let's talk about what happens actually. Burnout is not a weak system, it's laziness. It's something very biological, it's neuroscience. And it happens when the nervous system stays in survival mode for too long. So when you look at the brain, it's a little cartoon of the brain, but I wanted because the brain obviously is very complex, and there's lots of systems in the brain. But the parts that are responsible for this condition sits in your limbic system, which is your nervous system, and the amygdala is it's the security guard. It's the one that comes up and says, danger, danger, something's not lekker here. Something's wrong. We must be on high alert. So the prefrontal cortex is the front part of your brain. And it's your control center. It's where your rational thought is. It's governing higher order thinking. It's also an expression of your personality and where your decision making sits. And it's mostly responsible for what psychologists call your executive function. So when you are at work and you're performing optimally, it means your prefrontal cortex is doing its job. It's hydrated, it's aerated, it's lekker. It's got all the tools it needs to do the job. Then the amygdala is a small little almond-shaped structure in your brain's temporal lobe. It's on the inside. So if you imagine like a fist with your thumb tucked inside, I don't know if you can see my hand on the screen, but this is a good explanation of what your brain looks like. So the limbic system is your thumb, and right in the middle there sits your amygdala, and if you cover your four fingers over it, that's where your prefrontal cortex sits. So when your limbic system is on high alert, it literally flips your lid. So your rational thoughts and decision making can't really do what it's supposed to do. So the amygdala is where the danger detector sits. And it takes over. That's where your fight or flight response also sits. The hippocampus is where that's where your primary processing takes place. So converting short-term information into long-term memory, and your long-term storage obviously serves as your GPS navigating through our physical world, right? And then the anterior cortex is a central hub that bridges the emotional limbic system and the cognitive prefrontal cortex. So whatever emotion you are feeling in your limbic system, it gives the message to your prefrontal cortex saying, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling happy, or whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, and it's processing it so that your prefrontal cortex can then decide what to do with it. How am I going to act on it? So when stress becomes chronic, it means that your body is continuously releasing cortisol and adrenaline. And when those chemicals are in your, I mean, they are great for survival. If you're in real danger, you have to have adrenaline and cortisol. It gives you strength. It gives you quick moving power. But they're never designed to be a permanent operating system. So when you've got an overload of cortisol and adrenaline in your system, your frontal lobe decides to take a break. It says, okay, you don't need me anymore. It seems like you've got everything under control. And your rational thought goes on holiday. That's exactly literally what happens. So when people say that their concentration drops, their emotional regulation weakens, their creativity declines, Empathy reduces. We can't have empathy with other people anymore, which means we can't connect with other people anymore. Our decision-making deteriorates. And those are exactly the human capabilities and the capacity that organizations need the most. And when we are operating on fight or flight and in survival mode, then we're not performing optimally from a rational state of mind. So this is where communications enters the conversation, finally. Because burnout doesn't just grow from overload. It's unprocessed experience. And how do we process experience? Through communication. It's through the language, it's through the conversation, and it's through the connection that we have, not only with other people, but very importantly, with ourselves as well. And burnout develops in two silences. It's the silence between people and the silence within ourselves. So let's look at intrapersonal communication, and that's a space that I've been working in a lot in the last few months. It's the conversation that we have with ourselves. It's the story that I tell myself about myself. And high-performing individuals normally or usually have this conversation with themselves. I must cope. I can't fail. I must push through. I can rest later. I can't afford to slow down now. And over time, these narratives become very dangerous because they disconnect us from our own warning signs. Your body is telling you you must rest. You can't focus for this much longer, or whatever the case may be. We high performers have a tendency to normalize stress. If I'm not stressed, I'm not working hard enough. And we tie our identity to our achievements, to how fast and how much and how good we can perform. And silence has become a culture of strength. We've normalized being strong and being capable. And those are definitely all good things, to be strong and capable. But are we resilient? And are we effective? And are we thorough? So when our body says, I'm exhausted, but your internal dialogue says, but you have to push harder, or the nervous system says something is wrong, and your mind says, don't be dramatic. A lot of people go through the same things, And eventually the body forces the conversations that we are not wanting to have willingly. Personally, I was so disconnected from my body that I lost the ability to feel emotions. Before I started working my nerves back together, I couldn't feel in my body what happiness felt like, what sadness felt like. I mean, I had the memory of it, and I could think. I had a cognitive process around being upset or about being happy, but I couldn't feel it in my body. My body literally said, you don't listen to me, so why should I communicate with you? And that's exactly what happens with burnout. Then interpersonal communication. That's the communication that we have inside organizations, among colleagues, among peers, among leaders and their teams. And this is where culture becomes very critical, because burnout grows exceptionally well in environments where people don't feel psychologically safe. Is rewarded. Oh wow, Carlene did another all night. And 6 months, and he had RS virus, and he was hospitalized. And my husband was away on a film shoot, and I was parenting by myself. My mom was busy dying, and I remember taking a bath in the hospital bathroom. I wasn't allowed to. The hospital said mothers can't bath there. But I slept there the night, and the morning, 4 o'clock, I sneaked in a bath in the hospital bathroom. And I got on the N1, left my baby at the hospital, and I went to work because that was what was expected of me. And so, yeah, I still remember how I felt that morning on the N1. Teresa Lee, I don't know if you remember those years, but you were in those offices. So how do we start normalizing these kind of conversations? Because we're too scared to say, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm struggling, or I need help, or my capacity is compromised. I literally cannot take on anything else. But what we say instead is, I'm fine, I can do this. Yes, give it to me. And high performers always do that. A corporate culture of I'm fine. So there's some practical things that organizations can do to intervene. And this is definitely not an exhaustive list, but if your organization is not doing anything at the moment, then maybe this list can help you to start some spaces that we can open up conversation, because these are practical things, and they're not even supposed to cost any money. It's human things. So we need to start normalizing human check-ins. We need to create communication rhythms that go beyond performance. So not every conversation should be around how far are you on a deadline. Sometimes, most of the times, leaders also need to ask, are you coping? Not as a formality, but really as a leadership competency. We've got to teach our leaders empathy. Now, there's a big debate around empathy. Some people are born with it, some people are not. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. But it's definitely a skill that you can become aware of. And the more you practice it, the more intuitive it will become. The next one is training managers to listen, not to hear, not to sit there for 20 minutes and wonder when this conversation is going to be over. Really listen, because many managers are trained to manage output, but very few are trained to recognize emotional distress. And managers are often the first ones to notice that something's off with a team leader. And unfortunately, managers, leaders, especially in that middle section, the ones that get the pressure from the top and the bottom, those are the ones that keep the organization together, but they are also the ones that burn out the quickest. So we must teach leaders how to recognize behavioral shifts, how to have psychologically safe conversations. Tell me what's wrong. Don't be scared. I'm not going to judge you. And then not judge, really not judge. And how to escalate support appropriately. There's got to be some way for a leader, for a manager to refer a team member or an employee if they really think that there's some serious intervention needed. Then we also need to create early warning systems. So burnout shouldn't only be identified in exit in exit interviews. We can create all these things, and I know many organizations do. They create pulse surveys, team check-in, well-being reflections, anonymous reporting spaces. What happens with the results? What? And this is one of the ones we're always saying we're doing a wellness campaign. We are doing employee survey results. And are we really measuring the real human sustainability of our workforce? Or are we missing some critical risk indicators? And then the fourth one is to destigmatize the conversation. We need to stop treating burnout as a mental health, and personal failures. People can't heal in environments where they feel ashamed for struggling. And leaders play a massive role here. So the moment leadership models honesty, the culture will shift. The moment a leader says, you know what, this is also a struggle for me. I can't cope with this, or I need support. This is making me anxious, or I need to put these boundaries into place. Then something powerful will start to happen, and permission enters the room. And then another one, and this one is for the individual. It's not for the leader, it's not for the employee, it's not for the person in a work title. It's for you listening here today. Untangle yourself from the title and from your performance. We rely so much on external validation and external appreciation that we forget that who we are in ourselves, without the titles, without the performance, without the wealth, we are still magnificent human beings. And our self-worth does not depend on my work title and my performance. And this is what I've been teaching my clients for the last few months, is that when we know who we are inherently, the rest is a daily task. The rest is something we do to have an experience. The rest is something we do to meet a goal. But I'm not going to stress about my own today is what conversation am I not having with myself? A lot. Thank you.
Sure. Kathleen. I think there's a couple of moments where I also had to keep it back because so much of what you shared is very much human experience. We pull ourselves into our jobs, into our roles. We juggle multiple different styles along the way, things unravel. And to get back on track takes time. 24 hours. It's a journey, as you said. So avoidance and prevention would obviously be the best strategy. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability. Stunning. Thank you. Alrighty, let's have a look at our questions. If there's any comments or questions, any person feeling to maybe you want to add or comment or support Colleen's viewpoints, I'm going to open the floor. So let's just have a look. Hands up. You can just, anyone feels like jumping in, go for it. Don't be shy. I see there's a lot of in the chat box. Thank you very much. We have Marilee explaining quite a bit, supporting what you've said, Caroline. I'm just catching up on the chat box here.
I'm also having a read through them quickly.
Yeah. And it seems to be a fine line between being a leader and being responsible for your team, whereas you also take care of your own mental health, but also take responsibility for your team's mental health while juggling responsibilities at home. So as a communication leader, Caroline, knowing what you know today and the wisdom that you've gained, what are you doing differently, if I may ask?
What am I doing differently?
What are you doing differently today, knowing what you know now?
So
yes.
My journey with mental health began when I was 13 years old. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 13 years old. I am today years old, and now I know I don't have depression. But my journey with mental health has been probably my whole life. And all the therapists and all the gurus and all the self-help books, all of them talk about you have to do the work. And I'm like, rarig, more work. And it's not what I've come to know about the work that needs to be done for mental health and for emotional resilience. And I think that's really, it's mental health, yes, but it's emotional resilience, because when we have emotional resilience, we can regulate ourselves so much better. And the work that they talk about is the self-care. And the self-care is setting boundaries, saying, I am capable of this. But this comes with a lot of personal knowledge. You've got to know yourself, né? You've got to know exactly what you're capable of, what you can, what you can't, what you want to, and what you don't want.
So Karen, it speaks to...
So it's boundaries. It's taking the time. It's knowing when you need to rest and then making sure that you rest. It's filling your cup. There's let me share with you this. I've got one more slide. Let me share it with you.
Perfect.
This is a lesson that you get for free now. Pause my. There we go. Share. This is the work. Daily practice. Daily. Not every second week or when I get a chance. Daily. Our stress responses are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And the counter response to that is to rest, digest, to create, and to connect. So however you find your creativity to pan out. However you digest, however you rest, and however you connect. But you've got to do it every single day.
Lynn, I'm also going to jump in here while we're talking about it. So, many of us have children in our lives, whether it's our own or our nieces or nephews, and we find that the way we manage stress and the way we lead by example or not by example affects them.
In a big way.
You find with children at the moment, and especially high school children, teenagers, having enormous stress levels. It's skyrocketed. I've seen statistics. It is mind-boggling. Social media plays a role, peer pressure, all those things. So as someone who's close to children, whether you are a parent or a grandmother or grandfather, or you have children that are close to you because of, relationships, any advice that you can give us just to make sure that we do not indirectly and unintentionally stress out our kids?
Yes, it's exactly what we spoke about today. You have to have the conversations with them.
Yeah.
Talk to them, repair with them, teach them language that can help them express what they are going through and give them, but it's having the conversation, it's creating space where you can, and for children, you know, children are not rational, and that they still process on actually because they can feel it. They're emotional. It's their guide. It's their roadmap. And you've got to give them the space. You've got to give them the tools to digest whatever they are busy going through. Yes. Wonderful.
Nature is a fantastic
breathing
healer,
exercises, brain activation exercises, all those kind of things with that. So we there's a lot of things, and I mean it works for adults as well. It doesn't just work for kids, it works for adults as well.
And we'll have a look at the questions. A friend of mine, very dear, fantastic psychologist, gave me the advice many moons ago to journal. And it's not a dear diary every day because no one has time to do dear diary, but to literally take a pencil to paper and to write keywords, things that bother you, even draw pictures. This is my life. These are the pressure points. Pull yourself out of the immediate sort of environment. Try and change your perspective. Things like music, nature, taking a walk, and then obviously taking and eating nutritious food, cuddling minerals, magnesiums, potassiums, calciums, and not the coffees. The
all
coffees
those
are
things.
worse, right? All right, let's take a quick. I see Marilee commented here. She says that she's done a couple of radio interviews and around teenagers. It's in Afrikaans, but we are welcome to download the podcast.
I've learned a lot about raising kids from Marie. Yes.
Well, it's a topic on its own, isn't it? Righty, and I see Elsa B raised the question. Let's just see maybe if we've addressed it, but let's just double check. She asks, Caroline, did you experience cognitive overload? And if yes, how do you handle it, especially if it's linked to cortisol spike? Right.
Elsa B, yes. So I mean, a cortisol spike is it's a biological thing. It happens in your body. It's not something you can only think better. So yeah, I went for treatment, and I was medicated for a small while as well. But the cognitive overload, we call it a cognitive overload, but what really happens, like I explained, what your brain goes through, your hippocampus, where your memory sits, where, those kind of things, it's not connected. So when your limbic system is in overdrive and you can't make new connections anymore. You can't build new memories. You can't access old information or severed. They're broken. And that's why we talk about cognitive overload, but it's actually just the inability to access that parts of the brain that needs to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
Colleen, there's a beautiful comment. I'm going to read it out loud. It reads, mental stress overload leads to physical illness. You've explained it. I think the stigma of not being good enough at work or at home is something we really need to work on. A sad fact in some companies today is that leadership expect that employees, expect that employees are available at any time. It's that always on culture. After hours, now and then is not a problem. But since the pandemic, it became a norm to some.
Yeah.
It seems to be a massive growing, I don't know and everyone talks about it. We all talk about it. We all know about it. But yet I've not seen companies really taking control of it, Caroline. It seems like this thing is just literally spiraling out of control.
And I mean, I can comment on that, and it's exactly what Marie says as well. Leaders are people, né? And leaders are also in a position, whether you own the company yourself, I can speak from that perspective, you are constantly concerned, is your turnover going to be enough so that you can pay your people and, carry on your business sustainable? So you, as the owner of the business, you keep on putting in more and more and more. As a leader in an organization, if it's not necessarily your organization, you get the pressure from the top as well. So everybody is in a space of survival. Am I going to keep my job tomorrow? Am I also, am I going to be recognized by my leader and by my manager? So we all have the same fears. The problem is we don't talk about it. We don't say, so, ek voel net soos jy. I'm also concerned and I'm also scared about this. And I'm also wondering, are we going to get bonuses at the end of the year? And that's exactly the topic of today's webinar. Once we start having those conversations and we can see or we can understand what's going on with our peers and our leaders and our managers and our employees, then we can start moving the needle for them.
Colleen, here's another perspective as communication professionals. Are we guilty of causing anxiety in the system, in the organization, by 100%. Overload of communication, the consistency of communication, the volumes? Do this, don't do that. Dear colleague, leader, town hall. Are we guilty as well as communicators? Are we feeding the anxiety in the system? Are we supposed to slow down and push back and say only so many complaints?
Yeah, from a communication perspective and from a strategic position in an organization where you're supposed to set the strategy and inform leadership what the best route is. Remember, communication starts with the audience. So you need to know where your audience is at. You need to know what your audience needs to hear. And you also need to know what is going to make them move, what's going to have the best impact. So in organizations where the communications department is maybe not well developed, or where the communication department has been moved into the marketing team, you're probably going to have an overload of information coming from the comms team. But in organizations where the communications team is a strategic partner to leadership, knowing what the goals of the organization is, knowing what the right tools are for the organization, then we can start, that's what strategic communication is. Then we are really getting to a space where we are having a positive impact.
And so where you have the statistics, the black on white, showing that in your organization, we have significant burnout. We as communicators have to sit down as leaders in a coalition of all the people functions and the business functions and the risk functions are we and how do we influence change in a positive manner? Because I know a lot of communication professionals that are burning out at the speed of light. It is scary. And earlier we had a check-in with Christine, also mentioning journalists and how reporters, journalists are burning out. It's simply impossible to stay on top of information all the time and having to feed it to the audiences. But more than that, Christine, I think our well-being as communicators, our team's well-being, the organization's well-being, seems all very interrelated and systems-driven, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. It's I can't think of any profession. It comes in their own context, of course, but that's also why I think that's why my career moved into a transformation space, because I've been witnessing this for so long. I spent 20, always been something off for me. It's like, no, I don't want to do a branding campaign now. Our people are struggling. We need to talk to our people. We need to, and I think that was the seed. That was where that's where the seed was planted for me. So there's got to be more. There's got to be more. We've got to be able to do it better. And obviously being in a communication space, having the influence, because communicating, I think that put me in a space where I could use strategic communication as a transformation tool.
Absolutely. And Colleen, it speaks to self-leadership and developing that leadership skills around yourself, managing yourself, intrapersonal awareness, and building all these relevant tools, or using all these relevant tools so that you remain strong, yet human.
100%.
Because we forget that we are humans, right? And now AI is doing what AI is going to do. And in the next 6 months, we'll be seeing much more of AI. It's not going to go away. The fear of losing jobs, the debate around being human, and it's very interesting.
I really want to be an alien.
We're all human, and we have the time with us this afternoon.
Thank the space.
And the honesty. Oh gosh, it's been absolutely incredible. You may need to reflect, and I'm sure everyone else who joined the conversation is reflecting right now. Thank you so very much, Colleen. To everyone who joined us, there's a couple of new names. Wow, it's kind of wonderful.
I did. My fan base.
You want to give them
I've got a huge fan base.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So just on this, I want to give a special thank you to Natalie, who's our secretariat, and she makes sure that these things happen in the back end. She keeps us on our toes. Natalie, a special shout out to you, to all our board members who've joined. Thank you for the beautiful comments and the support in the chat. This will be recorded. Being recorded, and I just want in June. That is focusing on a communication cascaded zone, the pestle analysis, macroeconomic environment. We have two very strong speakers that will talk to us on the 4th of June. To those of you that are on our WhatsApp group, you would have seen the reminders, so that's happening. And then, yeah, Kathleen, lastly, thank you so very much. Have a fantastic afternoon, everybody, and yeah, stay safe.
Keep well, everybody. Take care of yourselves.